What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. and Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking Chapter 4 of Undertaker: The Last Ride, entitled The Battle Within. Now, this went up earlier today as I record this on Sunday, June 14th. We are approaching the end of the series. This is a limited series event, of course. Only 5 episodes. The 5th and final episode coming up next Sunday. Nothing going on next Sunday. Tonight's obviously the Backlash pay-per-view, and this will be going up during the pay-per-view. Took me a while to get around to watching the episode, though. I'm glad I checked it out, reviewing it right now. It was an amazing episode, as always. The first 3 were fantastic. The first 3 episodes went up, I think, the day of the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, then the 17th, and then the 24th of May, over Memorial Day weekend. So it's been about 3 weeks, actually, which is kind of crazy to think about, that it's been that long since the last episode of the show. But time has flown by, and I'm glad it came here now. The 4th episode has since arrived, because this was a great piece of business, as the first 3 episodes of the show were. And I'm anxiously anticipating that 5th and final episode coming up next week, if it'll shine more light on maybe WrestleMania 36 being Taker's final match, or another match coming up, who knows. But this kind of bridged the gap between where we saw the last episode end, at Crown Jewel 2018, with the whole DX versus Brothers of Destruction tag team match, which was complete garbage, up until present day, with the road to WrestleMania, which will be covered in the next episode. This episode was all about WrestleMania 35, missing that, the Super Showdown match with Goldberg, which was, again, a complete train wreck, and then the return match that he had at Extreme Rules like a month after that with Roman Reigns, Shane, and Drew, which was awesome. So we start this episode of them quickly recapping what we saw at the end of the last episode at Crown Jewel 2018. They kind of recap the same shots and same quotes and whatever from Taker and Shawn and Triple H, all calling it a complete train wreck of a match. That DX versus Brothers of Destruction match in Saudi Arabia, which was complete shit. And Taker said that he left Saudi Arabia that night thinking he was done. He thought that was it. The match was so bad, he thought that was it for him in the ring. We then kind of transition to something a bit that's not like present day at around 2018. They do a flashback to earlier on in Taker's career to kind of talk about the origin of the Undertaker character. Kind of talk about him outside of the ring, upholding his appearance, his presence, his character when he's not, inside the ring and he's doing public appearances, and how he's kind of kept kayfabe alive for his character anyway over the last 30 years of his career up until recently. And like now you see him being interviewed in his fucking home over Zoom on like ESPN and all these other outlets. But that wasn't the case for many, many, many years. He talked about how he passed on a lot of opportunities to do other things, whether it be movies or shows or this or that. He did a few talk show appearances early on, like in the 90s, in some while he was the American Badass, but other than that, and that was like years ago. That was close to 20 years ago. Since then, you don't really see Taker make many public appearances, and especially do many interviews. Again, until recently, now you see him on every freaking talk show that's out there, except for my own, unfortunately. But he's doing ESPN, he did Bleacher Report. He did an interview with Bleacher Report, not me, but someone else, a couple of days ago, which was cool. He is literally everywhere right now. But he also passed over the opportunity. He talked about this in another interview that I think is up right now on the WWE.com, on the WWE YouTube channel. It went up yesterday or like 2 days ago or something, where he talked about charities and how, because he's a part of the All In Challenge right now, if you know what that is. It's like where you donate money, and if you win, it's kind of like a lottery type situation where all the money donated goes to like people in need during the quarantine right now and people, suffering from that. And then you can win a day with like the Undertaker or whatever. But he said that he passed on all that stuff earlier on in his career, whether it be charities or what have you, because it wouldn't be true to his character. Foley says that he's reached the point now where he doesn't even call him Mark anymore. He calls him Taker. He calls him Undertaker. Foley's a big believer in Taker upholding his public, image as the Undertaker. Foley was like downright suicidal for years about like, if I ever see Undertaker on Twitter, if I ever see an Undertaker tweet, if I ever see Undertaker on Instagram, there's going to be hell to pay or whatever. And Undertaker is now on Twitter. He's now on Instagram, and he runs all his own accounts. He runs all this stuff himself. And he talks a bit about that on this episode. So someone's got to go check up on Mick Foley and make sure he's doing okay. Because Mick Foley he loves the whole kayfabe thing, specifically with Taker. He won't do it himself, but he will do it with Taker. And he loves the fact that Taker does that, at least up until recently. We hear from Bruce Pritchard, who obviously had a very heavy influence on the Taker character early on in its incarnation, as he obviously introduced Taker to the WWE viewing audience back at Survivor Series in 1990. He was a part of creative at that point. He talked about how he bought a lot of books about death, about dying, to kind of brush up on his history about what an Undertaker would be. Kind of brush up on his knowledge about what an Undertaker would be, to kind of do justice by the character. We hear from Paul Bearer, actually, as well, in an interview that was recorded back in 2012, because, of course, he passed away in 2013. He talked about the early days of the character and them having a lot of fun, filming at cemeteries, Bruce Pritchard brought up, and all this other stuff. And Taker talked about how he, or not Taker, but Pritchard brought up how Taker always understood whatever Pritchard wanted for a certain vignette or a shoot or whatever. Taker always understood what he was going for, which is why he's the consummate professional. Like, you can't really get much better than The Undertaker when it comes to stuff like that. And he was always dedicated to whatever he set his mind to. Whatever he set his mind to, he could do it, and he knocked it out of the park. Taker talked about how he dressed in black everywhere he went. Whenever he wasn't in character, he was still in character. Like when he went to the gym or went out in public, he played up the Undertaker character. He was never Mark Calloway outside of the ring. He was always the Undertaker character, because that's just the way that it was for such a long time. And JBL, I think, brought up how it was a running gag for a long time to get him to break character, for him to corpse on screen, like just to get him to laugh during a segment on or off the show, whether it be like after the show, a Dark Show segment. I don't remember. I think it was in the Broken Skull Sessions interview with Taker and Stone Cold back in November, when Taker talked about how Booker T actually tried to get Taker to laugh a couple times. It was really interesting. But they talked about, trying to get him to laugh during a segment after Raw by having him do the spin-a-rooney. I think Big Show may have tried to get him to laugh, and he just couldn't do it. So Taker talked about how he started working with a social media group a couple of years ago to do endorsements and stuff like that. I don't follow him on Instagram, I don't think, but he does stuff like that. He's on Twitter to kind of boost his brand, and that's what, that's what the world is all about nowadays. Your brand and being on social media. And now Taker's now on social media running all this stuff largely himself. I think the endorsement stuff people probably do for him, but when he's posting pictures of, random stuff around his house or coming to his wife's defense, which has happened before, when his wife was left out, Michelle McCool, that is. She was left out of like a top 25 Instagram photo thing, or like greatest women's champions of all time or whatever. And he defended her on Twitter, which was kind of funny. So anyway, from there, they kind of talk about how he has done more conventions and appearances in recent years. And one of the appearances he was set to do last year, I think he was supposed to be on the Inside the Ropes tour over in the UK. I think he still did it. I think he still stayed true to that commitment. The other commitment that he had to cancel, though, was StarCast. So he was announced for StarCast over AEW Double or Nothing weekend, Memorial Day weekend back in 2019. They announced him and no one could believe it. Obviously, he wasn't going to AEW, and he made that quite clear here. But it was a weird thing for him to go off and do this convention that was running the same weekend as AEW. And I know Conrad Thompson, I think he's the one who kind of is in control of the whole StarCast thing. He ran the convention over All In weekend, Double or Nothing weekend. I know they had it for All Out weekend when I was there in Chicago last year. I think they did it for Full Gear too. I don't think they did one for Revolution earlier this year. And they obviously didn't do one for Double or Nothing this year due to the current circumstances. But Conrad Thompson, I think, has done all of them himself, in addition to a few other people. I don't care what anyone says, despite the fact he may not be employed by AEW. It's obviously an AEW thing. They run it every freaking AEW pay-per-view weekend, with the exception of a few. So clearly they're they have some sort of working relationship with AEW to allow their talent to appear at the convention, to do events. I know CM Punk was doing it last year in Chicago. That had nothing to do with the fact that it was an AEW-sponsored event. It was merely because they were in Chicago and Punk was willing to do it. And, I was there. I got to meet him. It was a really cool time. Just because you're at the convention doesn't mean that you're in talks with AEW or whatever. But, Punk's not under contract anywhere. I don't think he's in UFC anymore, and even if he was, I think Chris Cyborg was there too, so who cares? And I think she's still in the UFC, isn't she? But I think Kurt Angle was supposed to appear, and that was right before they re-signed him, I think. With Taker, it was weird, because there were reports going around at the time that indicated that he wasn't under contract with WWE anymore and that he could do more stuff like this. Taker said here, so I was very surprised they even brought this up. Obviously, they don't mention AEW by name, but they do show Starrcast's tweet announcing Undertaker for the convention. They don't mention Starrcast by name. Taker doesn't mention Starrcast, but he mentions the whole incident, and they do show the Starrcast tweet. And they also show clips from like comicbook.com saying that, oh, Kurt Angle and Undertaker have to pull out of another convention, blah, 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 because of how they re-signed with WWE. And, the report at the time was that Vince was really pissed about Taker agreeing to do it, and rightfully so. And Taker says as much here. He makes that quite clear here as well, that Vince was not happy when he found out about that. So according to Taker, and I take Taker at his word here, he said that he had no idea, he had no clue, he was not informed that this convention was running alongside the AEW show happening that same weekend, which is the opposition, it's the rival right now to WWE. They were running their first ever pay-per-view that weekend in Vegas. Taker had he doesn't really keep up with that stuff. Yeah, he's on social media now, but he's not checking the dirt sheets to see who Tony Khan just signed. You know what I'm saying? So I can see where there would be a misconception there. Vince finds out about it. He was fucking pissed. And Taker even told him, I would never jump ship. Why would you even think that? But Vince was obviously a bit frustrated that he would even make that commitment without kind of either doing his research or telling Vince first. And he even said that he had a falling out with Vince for a little while. They didn't talk for a little while. I'm not sure how long a little while is, whether it be a month or two, because the convention was in May. I think they announced him in February or March. And you see him at WrestleMania. He's on good terms with Vince. I don't remember when that whole thing went down. So by a little while, I assume like a couple of weeks. Because obviously he was back in the fold by Mania time. He was at Super Showdown in June. He was at Extreme Rules in July. So clearly they weren't not talking for months on end. It was very short-lived. But still, he said that he understood Vince's position and why he would be frustrated. But he also said Vince has got to understand where I'm coming from too. I'm doing things for my own brand. I'm doing things for my own benefit as well. As I approach the end of my career, I want to do more stuff like this, and Vince should probably understand that as well. So as a result, they didn't talk for a little while. They moved on after they kind of let their guard down a little bit. So we kind of catch up with Taker again around WrestleMania time, around WrestleMania season. He says that he's been taking it easy since Crown Jewel, that terrible tag team match at Crown Jewel, DX and Brothers of Destruction in Saudi Arabia. And that's when he says he's not competing at WrestleMania this year. He's not competing at WrestleMania 35. But he's also not sure if his WrestleMania days are done. Will he ever compete at WrestleMania again? Was last year the match that he had with, what would that have been? The Cena match at Mania 34. Is that going to go down as his final WrestleMania match? It very well may. He has no idea if he'll ever do it again after that. And he thinks that he might be okay with that. He thinks he might be okay with the fact that he's done in the ring, done competing. And he never says that, I wanted to take the year off. They approached me with an idea and we didn't do it. I turned it down, blah, blah, blah. It sounds like they just didn't have any plans for Taker to be on that show, which honestly I completely agree with. WrestleMania 35 had a stacked card. Regardless of what people say about that show did not need The Undertaker. Even WrestleMania 36, this year was a bit different given the circumstances. Like last year, they had Batista on the card, his final match, Kurt Angle's final match, Triple H was in action. This year did not have any of those men on the card, so I can understand why they would bring Taker back for this year for the match with AJ, which made sense, never been done before. I get it, I liked it. The build was well done, whatever. 35, there really wasn't a natural story there for him to tell. There really wasn't a logical opponent, a match that people were clamoring for, aside from a rematch with Cena, which I think Cena was busy. He appeared at the show as the Dr. Thugonomics. They never did do that rematch, which honestly I'm okay with, because I really didn't have any desire to see it at WrestleMania 34 in the first place. Maybe a couple of years ago, but I think that time is long since passed. But anyway, he says that not appearing at WrestleMania 35 breaks a 14-year streak of competing or appearing. I think not just appearing, but competing at every WrestleMania. From WrestleMania 17? Yeah, 17 onward. 17, 18, 19, 20, and so on and so forth. He missed the only two Manias he's missed in his near 30 years with WWE. Were WrestleMania's 10. He wasn't at 10. I think he was hurt at that point. And 16. He was also hurt for that one too. So now it's 3, adding in WrestleMania 35, which he was healthy for. He could have competed. They just, I guess, chose not to put him in a match just because they had nothing for him. You never thought you would hear the day where they had nothing for Undertaker at WrestleMania, but such is the state of the company in 2019, 2020. Which isn't a bad thing, because again, I really didn't have any desire to see him wrestle anyway. And he also even says, listen, if it's not important, I don't want to do it. Which is kind of counterproductive with the whole Elias thing that he did on Raw. And he mentions that in a minute. About how, he popped up on Raw. He got a call from Vince on like Saturday to do the Raw appearance to lay out Elias. Which wasn't important. That served no purpose. They weren't building the Taker and Elias at the Super Showdown show. It was Taker and Goldberg instead. And maybe it was Taker and Elias originally. I don't know. But that served no purpose. It was a great moment. I was at that post-WrestleMania Raw. The crowd went nuts. Alexis and I went nuts. That was her first time seeing Undertaker in person. It was a great moment, but it served no storyline purpose, let's face it. So it's kind of counterproductive, in my opinion, for him to say that. I know he enjoys the pop, he enjoys the moment, he wants to be out there, but at the same time, for a fact that they called him to appear on, if they told him to do that same spot with Elias at WrestleMania instead of on Raw, he still probably would have done it, because that's just who Taker is. But he also says that he doesn't really know what to do over WrestleMania weekend because he's not busy doing appearances and signings and preparing and getting ready to wrestle and all this other stuff. He has no commitments this time around, aside from just spending time with his family, that being his daughter and his wife, Michelle McCool. He talked about how he could not recall the last time that he went to an Access signing that he wasn't there for like a signing or like an appearance or whatever. He simply went to Access kind of as a fan. Not among the public, obviously, that'd be ridiculous, but he went beforehand or after it ended, whatever, with his daughter and with Michelle. They loved it. They show their daughter, Michelle's old Lay Cool Women's Championship belt, the one that was split in half like 10 years ago, which is crazy to think about. But they show their daughter that, and they took a picture of her with the belt. She does Bailey's entrance and the do your own entrance thing, which is kind of cool. I've always wanted to do that. We didn't have a chance to do it ourselves when we went to Access last year. Didn't have a chance to do it when I went to Access for the first time 3 years ago either. But maybe at some point, maybe third times will be the charm whenever I go back to Access. Maybe next year or the year after. So, like I said, he got a call or text from Vince on the Saturday, I think, before Mania about doing Raw on Monday, making a quick appearance to lay out Elias. And he always does it. He talked to Michelle about listen, you're not going to tell Vince no, and you want to do it, so just do it. The thing is, though, he didn't bring his gear. Not that he forgot, he just never really thought that he'd be needed. But of course, that's a rookie mistake in wrestling. Even if you're not booked, you always bring your gear. You never know what might happen. Taker, despite having been in the business in WWE now for almost 3 decades, even he failed to bring his gear bag because he didn't think he would need it. Even he does not heed his own advice. His own veteran's advice about bringing your gear bag, regardless of where you're going, and maybe aside from your frickin' anniversary or like your honeymoon or something like that, But when it comes to wrestling-related events, always bring your gear. I'm not a wrestler, and even I know that. But he kind of jokes about that and how he had to fly home to go get the gear that same night, which probably would have been Saturday because he was at WrestleMania. So it was probably, what was the Hall of Fame night maybe, or Friday during the what was the TakeOver show? Either one of those days. He flew home. He had to find it because he hadn't wrestled in a while. Found the bag and then flew right back to New York from Austin, Texas, which is hilarious. He talked about how he got to hang out the day of WrestleMania. No stress, just got to relax, which was cool. We hear from Batista, who was a part of that WrestleMania, and he says, listen, I'm actually happy that he's not on the card this year. It feels weird. I miss it. But part of me is happy that he's not wrestling because they want to see him take care of himself. I don't want to see him, beat down his body and wrestle for the sake of wrestling. I like the fact that he's taking it easy this WrestleMania weekend. We see Taker hugging Vince and Gorilla, which was a great sight. They just kind of shoot the shit for a while about Taker forgetting his bag and him not being booked in the first place. Just really great stuff. And I like the camaraderie among Vince and Taker and the kind of the chemistry they have, the relationship they have, which they talked about before here on the show, and they've gotten emotional about. They've gotten emotional about, talking about that relationship. We hear from Scott Hall, who talks about how nothing compares to being in front of a live audience and getting that instant gratification, that satisfaction, that feedback. And you don't really get it unless you're in the business. And Taker says, listen, I don't just get ready, I stay ready in case I ever have to go out there and they need for me to do something. It's because he watched WrestleMania from Gorilla that night, and he misses it. He knows when he's watching the show in Gorilla that he should be out there that night. He should have been out there, and it was rough for him kind of realizing, listen, I should be out there right now. I should be in a match on this show. So like I said, he said that he stays ready. He doesn't get ready, just so we can always be ready for an appearance like we saw on Raw the night after WrestleMania. He was quite happy with how the Raw appearance turned out, laying out Elias real quick, great reaction, does his pose, and that's it. Get in, get your shit in, and get the fuck out. Like, it's that type of situation, where he just kind of shows up, does his thing, and then leaves. And it turned out very, very well. So from there, he sets his sight on Saudi Arabia once again. He wants redemption in Saudi after the awful performance he put in at Crown Jewel a couple of months earlier. This time, he's facing Goldberg. And he was called from Triple H actually, about facing Goldberg at Super Showdown. And he said, yeah, he was kind of intrigued by the idea, just because he knew it was a huge match. They've never worked one-on-one before. They had that very brief interaction in the 2017 Rumble match a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. But they had never worked one-on-one before, so we knew it would be a big match and first time ever, so why not? It'd be a big payday. He didn't mention that, obviously, but I'm sure it was a very big paycheck. I don't know if it was worth it for the pain that he put his body through in that match, but we'll get to that in a moment. So we see him at the final Raw before the pay-per-view. He sees Vince beforehand, waiting outside of his office like a rookie, waiting for Vince to be done so he can talk to him about something. And it's really cool. I love the various interactions that we see with Taker and everyone on the show. There are so many people that he interacts with, new stars and old stars alike. Everyone from Vince McMahon to Shane McMahon, Finlay. We see him with, Gregory Helms, Hurricane Shane Helms. We see him with Batista. We see him with just a lot of different people. And it's so cool. The Miz is one. We see him with Zack Ryder. Literally anyone and everyone you can think of. AJ Styles, which kind of hints at what's coming next for him in 2020. I love that whole aspect of this thing. Seeing Taker out of character and seeing him kind of mix it up and cross paths with people that you would never expect to see him in the same room with. People like a Zack Ryder, who I know they have like very brief history from like a dozen years ago when, Edge feuded with Taker going into WrestleMania 24. But aside from that, Zack Ryder's been around for a long time. Shawn Michaels has been around for a long time. We see Shawn and Taker kind of shoot the shit a bit. There's a whole list of people that I'm not thinking of. A lot of people I'm neglecting to mention here. But it's cool to see Taker interacting with these people nonetheless. So, including among those people are Matthew McConaughey and Lance Armstrong. What a random trio of people. McConaughey, Armstrong, and Taker. But yeah, we see them all backstage at Raw. It's the final Raw before the pay-per-view, and it just so happens to be where he's from. I think in Austin, Texas. Not just in Texas. I think it's in Austin, Texas, which is cool. And McConaughey, I guess his son is a really big fan, so he kind of talks with them, and McConaughey seems like genuinely interested to be there. And then there's Lance Armstrong, who's like randomly there, but I think he's also from the area. I think I remember them showing these guys on the show, on this Raw, like in the audience. But just seeing McConaughey there and Taker, it's like, okay, that's cool. And then there's Lance Armstrong, which is so random. It's a name that I have not heard in quite some time. But yeah, anyway, I thought that was a cool backstage moment. So they recap the match itself from Super Showdown between Goldberg and Taker. And Goldberg got concussed pretty early on. I think it was on the spot where he was going to spear Taker and he missed, and he went headfirst into the turnbuckle. And I think he hit his head on I don't know if it was the turnbuckle pad. It must have been like the ring post itself. And he was pretty beat up. He was pretty, busted wide open. It was a lot like when Taker himself got concussed at WrestleMania 30 in the resulting match. The subsequent match was shit between Taker and, Brock Lesnar, and how the match was just terrible because Taker had no idea where he was. I'm not sure if Goldberg has any recollection of the match at all. I know he's talked about it before, but I'm not sure, if he even remembers the match itself. He's probably brought it up before, I just don't remember. But yeah, Michelle McCool, watching from home, called it a train wreck. She was, Taker himself was upset after the match. You could see this dejected look on his face, and that is very much real. That is exactly how he's feeling in that moment. Not because, oh man, that was a hard-fought match and I won. And he doesn't sound like that. I don't know why I would do that accent. But he has that look on his face because he realized the match sucked. He realized that they really shit the bed. The match was not just bad, like the Crown Jewel match. It was embarrassing, and someone could have seriously gotten hurt. Like Triple H got hurt in that Crown Jewel match, but Taker could have almost died. With that, what's it called? The suplex, the jackhammer. Goldberg could have killed this dude. And when they realized Goldberg wasn't in it, I'm not sure at what point they realized that he was out of it during this match. They should have just called it off or done a quick finish, because dragging it on by having them go for tombstones and spears and choke slams did no one any favors. It was just that bad. And Taker could have died again if he landed on his head. He was centimeters away, Michelle said, from killing himself on that jackhammer suplex if he landed right on his neck. So it could have been a lot worse. Obviously, both guys were disappointed. And Michelle instantly texted the doctors at WWE to make sure he was okay. And Taker even said, Taker always says, whenever Michelle asks him, or whenever she texts him, like, oh, how you feeling? Are you banged up? Blah, blah, blah. He would always say, oh, it's all good. It was bad enough to the point where he actually admitted that his back was all jacked up. He's like, man, my back is all jacked up. I am seriously hurting. He was in some pretty intense pain. And it takes a lot for Taker to admit that, but he did to his wife, and that's when she knew. She was pretty nervous about his well-being and how he was doing and all this other stuff. So Taker said that he really assessed, where he was in his career on his plane ride home, because he called that match catastrophic. It was close to being catastrophic, even more so than it already was from a booking standpoint, but it could have legitimately been a tragedy had things gone a bit differently. And Michelle even said it was hard for her to watch. So Taker says, like I just said, that on his plane ride home from Saudi, he had to really assess where he was in his career. He had to ask himself, is it me? Is it my fault? Is this why, things keep happening the way they do? Is it because I just refuse to give up? Is it my fault? And Michelle said that he got lucky by simply not getting hurt. And Taker revealed that the Extreme Rules appearance, I am positive that Goldberg was not supposed to be at SummerSlam before that match. That match happened, and then he was like, listen, I got to get back out there. That match was terrible. I got to redeem myself. Taker, on the other hand, according to Taker here, he said that the Extreme Rules match was already made up before the Super Showdown match. He was always supposed to team with Roman on that show. It wasn't a last-minute thing. They didn't have Taker go out there to redeem himself from Saudi Arabia, from Super Showdown. He was always scheduled to be a part of that pay-per-view. And he didn't know if he can get out of it. He didn't know if he wanted to do the show because of how bad he was feeling coming out of Super Showdown. So they show him returning on Raw, and he looked good. He said that, hey, listen, for as critical as people are of me in my career, telling me to hang it up, I'm twice as critical to myself, compared to how fans are critical of me, if that makes sense. He's just really hard on himself is what I'm trying to say here. And he said, listen, nothing in the past matters anymore. Only this present moment. I got to go out there and make the most of this. We see Taker and AJ before the show talking with like some stagehand, some random woman who said that Taker and AJ are like the only two people that she knows backstage at the company that drink Dr. Pepper. So I guess that's one thing that AJ and Taker have in common is that they like Dr. Pepper. I'm not a Dr. Pepper fan myself. I prefer Pepsi, but that's just me. He said that, listen, it's hard. It's hard for me to hang it up because wrestling is the one thing, even including being a father, wrestling is the one thing that he has all the answers to. Something can go wrong. He knows how to fix it. He knows what to do. It's where he feels most comfortable. He knows really not much else aside from professional wrestling, and I can relate to that, but in the ring-wise anyway, from an in-ring standpoint, he can't really do anything quite as well as he does pro wrestling, so it's really hard to hang that up. So anyway, from there, where was I in my notes here? So we hear from Triple H, who called the business addictive. And Shawn Michaels says, listen, even the greatest things that you're addicted to can be bad if, things got to be done in moderation. Even addiction is still a negative term. It has a negative connotation, and rightfully so. Because, even if you're addicted to something that is great, you should limit even what your intake of certain things, including pro wrestling for a guy like The Undertaker. And he said that it's hard for Taker to walk away. It's hard to walk away from something that has loved you for so long, that you've loved also for so long, for almost 30 years now, plus actually more than that, if you include his career outside of WWE. And Edge even brings up, is it pride? Is it a case of pride where I don't want to walk away because I know I can still do it to a certain extent? And also because I don't want to look weak. Could it be a case of pride? Taker even says that he doesn't deny that Father Time is catching up to him, but he knows it's going to be over at some point. He just doesn't want it to be now. We hear from Stone Cold Steve Austin, who jokes about how he and Taker early on in their careers, like in the late 90s, would always joke, oh, who's going to be done first? Who's going to hang up the boots first? And clearly it was Stone Cold, who retired back at WrestleMania 19 in 2003. 17 years later, and Taker's still going strong, so clearly Taker won that war, far and away. But Taker even brought up how he hasn't really talked to Stone Cold about, winding down his career, when he should wind down his career, though he has had a lot of conversations with Shawn Michaels about that, who retired on his own terms. Kind of like Stone Cold did to a certain extent, although Stone Cold couldn't really wrestle anymore due to his neck. Shawn Michaels had the option. He could still compete for the next 10 years if he wanted to. He just chose not to. He hung up the boots when he did for a reason. And Taker even said, I wished I could have walked away at a few certain points with Shawn Michaels. He tells Shawn all the time that I wish we could have rode out in the sunset together. Just could have been done with pro wrestling at any given point 10 years earlier, for example. And he wished that could have been it. Batista also brings up how Taker can be his own worst enemy because he wants to keep going out there and doing his thing. Just won't say no. He won't stop unless he's kind of told to stop or he just can't physically do it anymore. And Taker even says he knows he can't physically do it anymore. He still loves this business with every ounce of his being, but he knows that he can't go out there and perform at the level that he wants to perform at, which is why he has this feeling that he's going to be done sooner rather than later. So from there, he talks about how for this match at Extreme Rules, this tag team match with Roman Reigns against Shane and Drew in Philadelphia, he wants to just go out there and enjoy it because he thinks that this very well could be the last time that he's ever in the ring. Obviously, it wasn't, but I think it was his final match for a while. He appeared at a SmackDown in Madison Square Garden back in September. I don't think he wrestled again though until he popped up during WrestleMania season this year. And this was a great note to end on. It was a very good match. And Michelle said watching the match that she could tell that Taker felt good, and she called it entertaining, which it was. It was probably, if it wasn't the best match in the show, it was definitely up there. It was a really good match. Not my favorite Taker match by any means. One of his better matches in recent years, because he put in a good effort. And he looked good physically, and obviously the tag team thing really helped because it kept him limited. And he just went out there and did really, really well. And he even said as much as well. He said, listen, I thought the match went well. I had energy. I really felt like that could have been a great note to end my career on. And the interesting thing is that they show footage after he walks backstage in a gorilla and he sees Vince. We hear the conversation word for word. You see him approach Vince and he tells him, I think I'm done. I'm done now. It's just not there anymore. And Vince was like, oh, you wouldn't never know based off the performance from tonight or whatever. I can't do a Vince impersonation. And he's like, yeah, I know, but my body's hurting me and I really don't think I can do this anymore. And I just want to end it here. Don't want to spring it on you, even though I am doing that right now. But just want to let you know, I think I'm done. I can't really do this much longer now. I really got to wrap it up. And Vince is like, listen, we'll talk about it, but Mark, I'll follow your lead. And Taker brings up afterward how he kind of had a sense of calm out there, something he hasn't had in a long time. He felt good, and he wants to enjoy his swan song. At the same time, though, Triple H says, the loyalty that Taker has isn't to Vince McMahon. I mean, it is, but it's not. The loyalty that Taker has is to the dragon you're chasing, which Shawn Michaels brought up the whole chasing the dragon thing a couple of weeks ago, and about how chasing the dragon is like, oh, you want to keep going and you have a bad performance, you want to redeem yourself. Or if you have a great performance, you think you can do it again. You're just continuing to go and go and go until you can't go anymore. And he just has to stop while he's ahead. But he does say very briefly, before the episode ends, he says, I may have a few left in me. And then we see him kind of, I don't know if this is real. I mean, obviously they do this for a reason. They show him backstage with AJ Styles. They're walking to the back, chit-chatting. And then Taker turns to the camera and goes, can you guys, stop filming for a little while? And then he and AJ kind of walk off. I don't know if that was just a different shot completely that they used, or if they're trying to imply if that was the conversation, or Taker approached AJ about working together and having a match going into WrestleMania. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know if he would have had that idea so many months out, because we didn't hear about the Taker AJ idea until like February. So I don't know if that's what that was about. They probably just used like a B-roll shot and kind of want you to assume that was what the conversation was about. But either way, that's what the next episode is all about. The fifth and final episode of Undertaker: The Last Ride, all about his final ride going into WrestleMania against AJ Styles at WrestleMania. Very interested to hear his perspective on the whole empty arena thing and doing the cinematic match and everything else. Really cool stuff. So maybe that'll be it. Maybe that's where they announced that the WrestleMania match was indeed it for him, or he may have one more match at Survivor Series on the exact 30-year anniversary of when he debuted in WWE. I'm not sure. But either way, I'm looking forward to it. This was another great episode, Chapter 4, The Battle Within, this edition of Undertaker: The Last Ride. Check it out right now on the WWE Network. I know this review is going up right in the smack dab middle of Extreme Rules. Not Extreme Rules, excuse me. Backlash. Did I say Extreme Rules earlier? I may have. Backlash is tonight. I'm not watching it live. I'm not watching it till tomorrow, so no spoilers, please. But if you're not watching the pay-per-view, if you have no desire to watch Backlash, at least utilize the time to watch this show instead, because it's that damn good. So thank you guys, as always, for checking out my reviews of Undertaker: The Last Ride. In the description box down below, you can see all the other reviews that I've done so far of Undertaker: The Last Ride, including episodes 1, 2, 3, and now 4, of course. Next week's fifth and final episode going up on Sunday. I'm not sure if the review will be up either that day or the next day. I'm not sure yet. Probably Sunday, but I'm not 100% sure about that yet. But either way, check out all the other reviews of not only the Taker: The Last Ride show, but all the other Network and Chill videos that go up constantly. Hashtag AskGSM, WrestleRant Radio excerpts, and so much more. So yeah, be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and be sure to subscribe for more daily content. So enjoy Backlash tonight, folks. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.